Hello, welcome. Uh, Other episode of Led by Life. Hannah and I were just catching up and we were talking, and she was sharing such a funny story with me. And it kind of took me off of like our intro, but welcome to the Led by Life podcast. I'm your host, Rafaela, and this is Hannah, also host. And we just talk about the gene keys and human design and the human experience, and we share just our reflections and insights of our journey through the gene keys. And this week we're on the 34th gene key. So this here is the shadow of, let me see, force. Yeah, and the gift of strength and the city of majesty. And I was Hannah and I were kind of spending some time just chatting before we started, and I was telling you that I didn't really get the chance to really take it in, or when I read it, I mean, I highlighted some things that stuck out to me and stuff, but I also didn't have a lot of time to contemplate it. But as we were talking, we came across the not self theme of where the 34 sits in the human design chart, which it sits in the sacral. And we started talking about the not self theme because within this gene key, there's this concept of efforting and effortlessness and forcing, and really trying, right?
Mm.
That was in there too. So tell me, I want to hear a little bit from you of like, how have you noticed just the concepts within this one come up for you over the last week or whatever?
Mm. I think this one's been really prominent for me recently. Like I was telling you before, I'm really working on letting go of force and letting go of patterns of pressure and stress and feeling like I have to force things or make things happen in my life. And instead of just allowing things to flow naturally and allowing my expression to just come out of me. And, we both have this center undefined and we both have this gate undefined as well. But being manifestors, we have open sacral centers, and they say that this is one of the deepest places of conditioning for manifestors is this open sacral center, being around 70% of the population who have a defined sacral. We're constantly taking in this conditioning that we have to keep going and keep doing things and be productive and keep working. And, it goes against our nature of needing rest, needing a lot of rest or in between our urges. And so this is something that, I've really been bringing to my awareness recently and really feeling like I'm ready to let this go now.
Mhm.
And of course, like what we talked about in the 33rd gene key last week, when we become more aware of it, it can sometimes become even more uncomfortable because we're noticing ourselves doing it. And with some of the work that I do is like content creation, and I have a YouTube channel where I had committed recently to doing like one video a week. And I was like, I'm just going to put up one new video a week. And I noticed last week I let go of pressure and I just was honest about where I was at, and the creation of that video just kind of flowed through me, and it didn't feel like work and it didn't feel like effort and trying. It just felt like I was just expressing what was going on and I was just sharing.
Mhm.
And then this week I came to, I felt that pressure again. Okay, I've got to film a video, I've got to make something. And I just realized that like anytime I'm trying to force something or put pressure on it, I just can't do it. It just doesn't flow. Like that creativity and that energy just doesn't flow. There's resistance. And so like I was telling you, I got to a place a couple of days ago where I just felt like this huge amount of pressure, and I kind of broke down over it. And it was like the ego getting really loud. And,
Mhm.
we talked about last week, the death of the ego. And I think that's kind of really what was happening, is that voice, that ego voice, like you have to push things and force things and try, that just was ready to be done with. But it got really loud before I could see the pattern fully and let it go. So yeah, that's how it's showing up for me. How
Yeah.
about for you?
Well, like I said, so also, everybody keep in mind, Hannah is a whole day ahead because she's in Australia and I'm in the US. So just for like having an understanding relatively of what I'm about to say, like last week, like I shared, I had done a task where I wasn't reading anything. And because we record on Wednesdays, that only left me like 2 days and, the week and busy and whatever. So when I read it, I like I said, like I didn't really take anything in, but in hearing kind of where we've been in our lives over the last week, I even just now when we were reflecting on the not self theme and how this comes up, because I also have, an undefined sacral. I don't have this gene key particularly. Um, but it was saying something about how like, oh, I'll just have another cup of coffee and get it done. Right.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking like lately, I've been I've been noticing that I've been wanting more coffee lately. And like literally coffee, not just like I want more caffeine. No, I want just more coffee. Um, and I'm like, I wonder like if that has anything to do with the fact that I live in a busy city. So I live in downtown San Diego. So, it's a busier city and there's a lot of people around, right? And I work now back in an environment that most people are 5 days a week, 8-hour days, and it's a 24-hour facility. So it's constantly going. But I find myself like just wanting more coffee. And I don't know, it's just interesting how that's like one of the not self themes. And today I was actually thinking to myself, oh, I know where I record later in the day, like maybe I'll get like a matcha or something. And then I was like, no, it's okay. I'm just not gonna do it. And I was kind of like listening to myself because I think that sometimes we can still get caught up in like we can still get caught up in the conditioning even when we're going through the process, and I just want to read some of the other things, like some of the voices, right, of the not self, of the sacral, like, let's keep working. We really need to get this done. Let's just get a cup of coffee. We can do that too. We're not tired yet. I don't want to take a nap or lay down. There's too much to do. Let's take care of that for them. Let's go find a mate. Who can we take care of? And that's when I laughed when you were reading that to me, because um I have this thing where, and this happened recently, where like things in the house have to be a particular way, right? And I couldn't have my house in a particular order for the last couple of weeks because I was having some treatments done in the home. And I think I did a really good job of just like letting it be and not like feeling disordered because my house felt and just was in like disorder, right? And at times I think I like accept like it's okay that the clothes won't get put away right away, or that this won't get cleaned or tidied up or this won't get done right away. Sometimes I can. But I noticed that like this past weekend, I was like really battling. Like it's like I didn't want to do it. And I kept hearing this voice of needing to do it, needing to do it, needing to do it. And it just spiraled into a whole bunch of my energy just going into places that just ultimately did not serve me really, right? Um, and I think that the thing with the sacral here is the fun part about it is that it does relate a lot to the physical body in the sense of like, at the gift, he talks about the strength it's like an inner strength, but it's like a flow of strength. Like
Mm,
he kind of identifies like Olympians. I think of like Olympians or like professional athletes or people who just do incredible things with their body where you're like, wow, you make it look so easy.
yeah, and they're not forcing it. It just like
Mhm.
flows out of them.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
of Simone Biles because I absolutely love watching gymnastics and like
Me too.
track and field. I love watching the Summer Olympics.
Mm,
And they just like it's a power. And this gate is literally called the gate of of power, right?
yeah.
Um, so I think Richard Rudd is just so spot on like the description of this gene key, but you're right, they have this like effortlessness that goes, and I think because it's related to our sacral, which she says
Mm,
a lot of our power lives in our belly, and I've been thinking about that recently. um eh, that yeah, notice where your body moves or how you move your body based on like the thoughts or the emotions that are arising, um and how it's like navigating, because I just wonder if I felt like I could acknowledge the maybe the pressure that was coming to like get something done rather
mm.
than being like resistant to it. I wonder if ultimately like my night that evening would have gone just differently. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You said something really interesting about like the energy wasted on trying to control things, or I can't remember exactly the words you used, but you talked about like the energy spent on wanting things to be a different way or trying to do things in a different way
Mhm.
rather than, and I think that was one of the key things that stood out to me from this chapter, is like from this gene key and this theme, is like how much energy are we wasting on trying to force things because we're pushing
Right,
against
right.
the flow of life,
Mhm.
you know? And I think that that's something that we can really like learn, with this idea of having an open sacral. I think that's something that manifestors can really learn and like give to the world, is that almost going against the need to be forcing things, or do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that that's a real learning, a real place
Yeah,
of wisdom, is like allowing rest,
yeah.
allowing, allowing, not
Mhm.
resisting. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about, the other not self sort of conditioned voice of who can we take care of, right? And you
Mm,
and I both kind of like had a chuckle at that because I was just, a lot of my therapy lately that I've been doing has been around um this this pattern, and not it's not all bad, right? It's not all like not healthy or not supportive. Like I I don't want to take care of people necessarily, but I do want to help them, right?
mm,
And so that's kind of how it comes up to me. For me is like, how can I how can I make sure, how can I like force, aka like control certain
mm,
environments or settings, or maybe even people, so that then like catastrophe doesn't happen, or
mm,
just so something bad doesn't happen. But essentially that's like me forcing my will onto life. And I
mm,
and I think that then that ultimately just causes me to like not feel good or be run down or be tired or not honor like myself and disrupt
mm,
somebody else's process. Like, there's that saying of like, who are you to disrupt someone's journey? Like that's for them. And so
yeah.
I've been really trying to like practice having some faith in that idea that like they're going to be okay. And I wonder if like a maybe more balanced voice or healthy at, I don't know how you want to describe it, of the sacral would be something like, it's going to be okay.
Mm.
Because how much of the like the force and the efforting to get ABC done or whatever comes out of like, if I don't get this done, then the worst is going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he talks about how like this shadow was necessary for humans because it was all about survival of the fittest.
Mhm.
And yeah, but now it's like becoming destructive to humanity. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, I oftentimes also do like want to carry this experience of things being like effortless and kind of with ease. And I think it just sometimes takes a lot of practice, just like with anything. And noticing when you're forcing, like when you're meeting a wall continuously, or when it's like exerting more energy from you to
Yeah.
to do the thing or make whatever happen.
Yeah.
um but it takes a little bit of trust to like let go.
It takes a lot of trust.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's like the journey we're all on is like trusting our true nature.
Hmm.
And, he talks a lot about how this is related to nature as well, I think. Like, the plant world, and I can't
Yeah.
remember exactly what he said, but like, nature's not efforting, everything just flows. And I think that I've been thinking a lot about recently about resources and about, the various resources that we all have in our lives: money, food, attention, time, energy is a resource, and so many other things as well. And just thinking about like, where am I leaking my resources?
Hmm.
And a big theme has been, like we've been talking about a lot lately, is money. So looking at like, where am I leaking money? Where am I spending money on things that aren't really important to me? And then I think the same thing goes for things like energy. Like, where am I spending energy, and time and my attention, like all of these different things on, like, either going against myself, my true nature, or just on things that aren't really important to me. And so, yeah, I don't know the relevance of that, but I think just sort of this idea of like, where am I almost blocking myself or my energy? Or do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's interesting because we think of like our resources as being things that we have to um like work to obtain, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the sacral is also around productivity, um and well not well reproduction really, and work and availability. And I was just thinking like maybe that's why there's such a pressure
Hmm.
to continuously work or effort or make things happen for ourselves, because it's very closely together, like related with like, well, how are we going to continue to survive,
Survival.
especially within the sacral if it's around literal reproduction.
Mm.
um then we've kind of like been in this evolution in where we are like in our modern day society, where if you don't maybe this is just my own thought, like how could I reproduce if I don't have the resources?
Mm.
So then it kind of brings us into this conditioning like of needing to work to then
Mm.
obtain money, because that's a way in which we kind of support an avenue of currency to help us sustain the
Yeah.
life, well, the things, right, not the life. um and yeah, you kind of just made me think about that, because I was thinking of how our teacher, Nikki, once did I don't even know what you call it, what she called it, but essentially she went through all of the centers, and they were kind of like prompts or kind of questions around like the not self themes and things to ask yourself. And I kind of started, and I think at one point I had talked a little bit about how like my 9 to 5 job at the time, or like, before, early on when I got into the field, like I quickly left. And I
Mm,
felt once I was out of it that it was so great that I had left. Um, and so it's very interesting, as we all know, being back in that kind of work schedule and still going through this process, and getting to know my energy and how it best rests and work. And, you know, um, I've just had to find ways to support that kind of
yeah.
expenditure, right? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But
Mm, I feel like there was something I was going to say, but now I've lost it. um, oh, I've been reading a couple of books actually, which relate to this. I've been reading The Soul of Money, which you got me
yeah.
onto. And she talks a lot about this idea of sufficiency. And I think that I mean, I need to finish the book before I can like really understand all the concepts and like really let it sink in. But it's definitely I've been thinking a lot about like, what do I actually need? And so much of my fear is just programming that I need to have a constant flow of income and I need to have more, like always be getting more and more. And she talks about this like scarcity myth that we're never going to have enough and that more is better. And so I've really been like sitting with that, like, can I just appreciate what I have and like enjoy what I have and know that I have enough
Mm-hmm.
instead of constantly feeling this pressure to need to do more, to need to make more. And ultimately it's because we don't feel like we're good enough deep down, that or like you said, we're afraid that we won't survive. So we need to like
Mm-hmm.
constantly be obtaining and doing more. And the other book that I have been drawn to, which was so interesting how it happened, I heard about the law of least effort. And so I looked it up. I don't know. I think I might have got a YouTube video recommended to me about the law of least effort, like do less and achieve more, that kind of
Yeah.
law. And so I Googled it and it came up as one of the laws in Deepak
Yeah. The
Chopra's
7 spiritual
seven
principles.
spiritual. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to Alex, do we have that book? Like, I feel like we have that book. And he's like, oh, I don't know. I can't remember if we've got it. Anyway, I was lying in bed the other night and I was like, I swear we have that book. And I got up and went to the bookshelf and I like found it straight away. It was like so
Wow.
effortless, the whole thing. And I pulled it out. And so I've started reading the 7 spiritual laws of
Mm-hmm.
success. And I haven't got to it yet, the law of least effort. But it's so interesting, even just the first law, which is the law of pure potentiality. I think
Mm-hmm.
he talks about stillness and doing nothing and meditation and non-judgment, not judging anything that's occurring. And he talks about being in nature. And so I'm like really excited to get into it and to get to that law of least effort as well, because I feel like that's what I'm really being drawn to at the moment. Like this,
Yeah.
this is like the fear. Can I do less and still have all of my needs met? Can I work with my energy, not against it?
Mm-hmm.
Can I trust my urges and the timing? Can I trust that like I will have the energy and the resources that I need and I can like know when the right time is to take action?
Mm-hmm.
Like, can I do all these things and can I really just have faith and then still have all my needs met? I think that that's like the real question that
Yeah.
I'm being asked at the moment. Yeah.
Well, and I feel like that's just a very also effortless way of getting to like what's the best way that's going to get you out of the resistance.
Yeah.
Those were your questions. Like you came up with that, right? And that just like very freely flowed out of you. Because what I was thinking as you were saying all of this was um how this translates into anybody listens to Abraham Hicks, kind of like their philosophy and their teachings and what they share just around like the three steps. You ask, you source answers, and I don't know them by heart, but the point is like one of the main things they talk about is like you're not getting to the thing that you want because you just keep pushing against it, right? And
You're
so
in the way.
you're in the
Yeah.
way, right? And I
Yeah.
feel like we get in our own way all the time with all of the conditioning. And so this is why I kind of like remember falling in love with human design, is because it felt like an experiment that was playful and that like you could literally experiment with. Now it's
Mm,
just a way that I kind of go about my days, and especially when I'm talking to my team, I'm like, let's just experiment with doing this today and see what
mm,
happens, like how it goes. And I do that with my own life, and when I remember. And so I feel like today was kind of a little work for me to be like, let me just not have more coffee and see what
mm,
happens. And
yeah.
ultimately it was fine. I didn't need that. But I think that going through each center and looking at the not self themes and the questions, and from whatever resource you want, there's
Mm,
tons out there, can be really helpful, like clearing processes of like, okay, what is my conditioning here?
mm,
I like those questions. It kind of makes me want to go back and like answer or find that course she did. It was pretty cool.
mm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, like as you were sharing that, I was laughing because I feel like my journey with human design has been a lot less playful and
Mm,
a lot more serious,
mm,
which of course is like my biggest shadow, is the shadow of seriousness. But I definitely feel like I'm letting go of that grasping, but there has been a huge amount of resistance for me because I remember having my first reading, and I remember like I left it being like my mind was blown. I was like, oh my gosh, like how can you tell all this stuff from just this weird looking chart?
yeah.
And how can you read me so clearly? But
Hmm.
also at the same time, I was really upset because I felt like I was living really out of alignment with
Hmm.
what I was supposed to be, according to my chart. And um, yeah, I like initially I thought I was a manifesting generator when I first learnt about human design. I was like, that's not me. I have all these different interests.
Yeah.
I have so many things. I go from one thing to the next, and I love being busy. I'm go, go, go constantly. And I realized that that actually was the not self.
Right.
Um, and the conditioning. And that's kind of how I was raised as well. Like, um, you know, my mum was just doing her best, but there was always this theme of stress, like everything's hard, everything's stressful, everything has to be like
Mm,
we have to make things happen.
mm,
I have to take care of everyone around me. I have to
mm,
take care of things myself. Like I have to do it all alone, that kind of
mhm.
energy. And it's been really beautiful to see her let go of a lot of that as she's getting older and she's learning what really is important, but there's still so many of those patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing for me now, like kind of revisiting the sacral and being with it again, especially after our conversation today, is gonna, it just sparks my interest more into looking into how is my sacral conditioned, and where, what is, and not that I need to go like searching for it. I think whatever life experiences show up for you in that day, like that's your work, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Again, going with this idea of like flow and effortlessness. And that's one
Yeah.
thing I'll just share with anybody. Like, we don't need to force our healing or like effort our deconditioning or our alignment. Like, it's all there, very divinely orchestrated if you're just present with the day.
Mm,
Because the day will show you, like, it's what's meant for you is meant for you in that day.
mm,
Um, and that lightens it up for me, like, yes, I'm back working in a 9 to 5 that once like led to burnout and all these other things. And you actually have helped me really kind of like think of this in a different way to help me like step more into accepting of like where I'm at. Cause I mean,
what
I
did I
wanted,
say?
I don't really remember, but it was something around like asking, asking source to support me in this process, like knowing that this isn't what I want forever, but how can I best be supported knowing that this is what I'm doing? Because, like, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that a 9 to 5 is like, fuck no, like, I don't want to do that, or you don't want to do it anymore, or whatever the case may be. Um, and for me, there's been so much more around that work pattern, or just the work that I do now, that I've had to not put so much resistance towards that, because then I'm just like you said earlier, like then my energy is just going into places that it's not getting me anywhere. So I feel like I'm just now really curious to go back into like knowing a little bit more of our sacral and the power that is within our sacral, and how I can best use it given the confines of what my life looks like right now.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's, yeah, working with your current circumstances, not against it.
Yeah.
I think so much energy is exerted from wanting things to be other than they are, or,
Right.
resisting life as it is exactly right now.
Hmm.
And like you said, we don't have to go out and force change to happen. Like change will happen. Change is constant. That saying, the only thing that's constant in life is change. And so nothing's permanent.
Hmm.
Nothing's permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Well,
Mhm.
I think that's all we got for you guys.
Yeah. That was a good one. I like this
Yeah.
energy, even though I don't have it. I like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a piqued interest now into knowing more about the sacral. So, um, thank you for this
Me too.
conversation, and for all of you guys for listening. Let us know how it relates, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you then.